Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we are going to present about our material, Psycholinguistics. The member of this group is Erlawati and me, FERISA INDRI HAPSARI. Okay, the highlight of our discussion today is the first, the definition of psycholinguistics, and the second one is language acquisition, and the third, monolingual use and acquisition, and the fourth is the psycholinguistics of bilingualism. And the first, the definition of psycholinguistic will be presented by Mbak Erlawati. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, according to Richard Nordquist, psycholinguistics is the study of the mental aspects of language and speech. It is primarily concerned with the ways in which language is represented and processed in the brain. According to Alan Graham in his book entitled Psycholinguistics, Central Topics, psycholinguistics is the study of the mental mechanism that make it possible for people to use language. It is a scientific discipline whose goal is a coherent theory of the way in which language is produced and understood. All right, the next is about language acquisition. Well, in Wikipedia, language acquisition is the process by which humans acquire the capacity to perceive and comprehend language. In other words, gain the ability to be aware of language and to understand it, as well as to produce and use words and sentences to communicate. Language acquisition involves structures, rules, and representation. The capacity to use language successfully requires one to acquire a range of tools, including phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and an extensive vocabulary. Language can be vocalized as a speech or manual as in sign. Human language capacity is represented in the brain. Even though human language capacity is finite, one can say and understand an infinite number of sentences, which is based on a syntactic principle called recursion. All right. The next is about monolingual use and acquisition will be delivered by Ms. FERISA.
Thank you. The next term is about monolingual use and acquisition. And this term is divided into two. The first is monolingual language acquisition. And then the second one is sentence production and comprehension. Okay, this is the monolingual language acquisition. You can see the example below. This is the dialogue between child and his mother. The dialogue is, child, nobody don't like me. And then the mother say, no, say, nobody likes me. And the child repeated, nobody don't like me. And then the mother say, no, now listen carefully, say, nobody likes me. And then the last utterance of the child is, oh, nobody don't likes me. According to McNeil in 1966, from this example, children acquire a given structure when they are developmentally ready to and not before, and they do so on the basis of hearing and processing the utterances that occur around them, not by having their errors corrected. Okay, and then the second one is sentence production and comprehension. In the case of production, how does a speaker convert a message into a syntactic, morphological, and phonological structure? In the process of producing an utterance and in comprehension, how does the language user assign a structure and meaning to a speech utterance of his or her language? Look at the example here. This is the speech error of reversal or exchange error. And then the form of 2A is the correct form, and the form of B is the example in the actual one. Language users not only produce speech utterances, they comprehend them as well. Just as there is a cognitive process of the short noted above for production of utterances, there are also processes of utterance comprehension that enter into language use. The next is about the psycholinguistic of bilingualism. The psycholinguistic of bilingualism divided into three parts. The first one is input and language separation in simultaneous bilingual acquisition. And the second one is sequential and adult bilingualism. And then the third one, bilingual modes of language use. Now we go to the simultaneous bilingualism. Simultaneous bilingualism or multilingualism is when a child acquires two or many languages simultaneously. For example, when they are raised by parents speaking more than one language. The child's task in simultaneous bilingualism acquisition seems even more complex than that of monolingual child. The problem of acquisition for bilingual children is shown diagrammatically in figure 4.1. The two diagrams in this figure are intended to represent in a simplified way two ways in which caregiver often plan to manage input to the child in the two language. The first one is separate input. It means that one person, one language, and then the second one is mixed input. It means that a person made for allocating input from the two languages to particular individuals. Language separation in simultaneous bilingual acquisition. There are two major issues that has been addressed in research on simultaneous acquisition is whether the two language systems are separated in child's mind or not. According to unitary system hypothesis, and the second one is according to dual system hypothesis. And then under the unitary system hypothesis, bilingual children undergo a stage of confusing before separating the two language system. Under this hypothesis, in the initial stage of acquisition, children have no reliable mechanism for separating two linguistic systems to accommodate the two distinct sets of input utterances. And then under the dual system hypothesis, said that children do not undergo a stage of confusion. Rather, they separate both the lexical and the grammatical system as early as age 2 or before. The next is sequential childhood bilingualism and adult bilingualism. Sequential childhood bilingualism is acquisition of a second language between the age of 5 years and puberty. And the adult second language acquisition is acquisition of a second language after puberty. The more explanation about this will be delivered by Miss Erla.
Okay. Well, here is the table of the summary of similarities and the differences among types of language acquisition. Yeah, we can see here about the transfer in initial stages of acquisition, monolingual and simultaneous bilingual acquisition. There is no transfer in initial stages of acquisition, while in the second language acquisition, both in sequential acquisition or in adult acquisition, there is a transfer in initial stages of acquisition. And then about the speed of initial learning in monolingual and simultaneous bilingual acquisition, uh, they have a gradual speed. Yes, and then in the sequential acquisition between age 5 and puberty, they have faster than in monolingual or simultaneous bilingualism, while in adult acquisition, they have faster than either simultaneous or sequential pre-pubertal. The next is about the ultimate attainment of implicit native-like knowledge. Yes, in monolingual and simultaneous bilingual acquisition, there is an ultimate attainment, while in sequential acquisition between age 5 and puberty, there are some non-native features and many narrative features when self-monitoring is not operative in adult acquisition. And about the result of explicit correction, there is none of it in monolingual and simultaneous bilingual acquisition, and there is a little or non-result of explicit correction in sequential acquisition between age 5 and puberty, and there are some result of explicit correction in adult acquisition. Okay, the next is about bilingual modes of language use. This term is about the code switching and code mixing. The first term is about the code switching. Code switching is a linguistic phenomenon which occurs in multilingual speech communities. The term describes the process in which a communicatively competent multilingual speaker alternates or switches usually between two languages or language varieties or codes during the same conversation. Let's have a look in this example. The sentence is, this morning saya antar anak ke swimming pool. This is the Indonesian, but and then he switch into the word saya antar anak in bahasa Indonesia, and then he switch again in English ke swimming pool. Yeah, in this example, the speaker switches between two codes, Indonesian and English, within a single sentence. Okay, next, about code mixing. Code mixing refers to the embedding of linguistics unit, such as phrases, words, and morphemes of one language into an utterance of another language. Here is the example. Erla says, kapan kamu mau ke UMP? And then FERISA answer, pardon? And then because probably FERISA doesn't really understand about the word in bahasa, so Erla changed her utterance into English. So she says, when will you go to UMP? And FERISA answer, next week, I think. Simply, code mixing is a mixing of two or more languages while communicating. All right, here we go to the conclusion. Well, in the process, we have attempted to focus particularly on the key notions and silent features of linguistics and psycholinguistics that are of value to practitioners of educational linguistics. What kinds of linguistics knowledge and learning need to be exploited to the greatest extent possible in classroom interaction and material development, among other aspects of the educational linguistic enterprise. Okay, that's all, Ms. Farisa. And here some of the references of our discussion today. This is the theme, and thank you. Please, Ms. Farisa, will you close this session?
Okay, now we come to the closing session. Thank you very much for your attention. See you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.